So I was just saying, is that okay for me to record?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, cool. And so yeah, like I pretty much explained in my message, just sort of looking at sort of the impacts that the fuel crisis is having on the tourism industry in Vietnam.
Mm.
And I guess you're
Yeah.
working in or with hotels and things. What kind of things are you seeing being impacted most?
Okay, so there's just been a slowdown generally
Hmm.
around for some reason my cameras won't it says it won't can't find my camera. I don't know why. So sorry about that. I've
That's
tried
all
to turn my camera on and it says camera not found. Make sure your camera is plugged in. Well, my camera is plugged in, and my previous call, my camera was working 100% perfectly. So I don't know why the camera's not working on this. Anyway, back to
the
what we were talking about.
sure.
Um, so what we found in just talking to my colleagues around the country
Yeah.
and just talking to industry people is that there's been a slowdown, obviously, in European business simply because airfares have increased quite dramatically,
Sure.
and it's not a it's not a sudden stop. It's been just a gradual slowdown. So the bookings that were already made, some months ago from Europe in the long haul, they've been continuing, but there's no sort of new bookings coming up, or very few. They've dropped quite significantly.
Sure.
Also, even business coming from Korea, which is actually one of the biggest inbound markets into Vietnam, that's also dropped quite a bit. And there's a lot of resorts that relied on significantly on the Korean business. They're hurting quite a bit. Um, One of my colleagues who runs a very large resort in up near Nha Trang in Cam Ranh,
Hmm.
he's been very lucky to have replaced a lot of the Korean business he had with Russian business. So, and I think
Okay.
it's rather fortunate because that's a little bit unusual. I don't think all the resorts were just have managed to replace the Korean business, and that's a big resort. It's a 600 room resort, so he needs to replace some of the business that's been lost. But I think all resorts are hurting a bit in that regard. It's a holiday week here or not here, but holiday week in Vietnam
Sure.
this week. That's why I'm actually away. um, but the resorts, from what I understand, and certainly the ones we've been involved in, they're getting a lot of domestic business. The domestic
Hmm.
tourism is actually quite good, especially those resorts that are in driving distance of Saigon and Hanoi.
Sure.
They're doing okay. I don't know about Da Nang. I haven't spoken to anyone from Da Nang, which is, as you probably know, is a major tourist destination. So I'm
Mm.
not really sure of the what the situation is up there. But it's I think the whole country is been affected to some extent. There's been a cancellation of some domestic flights, like all airlines around the world. They've cancelled some flights to reduce the cost of fuel.
Hmm.
But whether how much of an impact that's had around throughout the country, I'm unsure. One of the
Sure.
other things I found out too a week ago is that a lot of the domestic business that goes to resorts, they go by bus, and during
Mm.
holiday periods, the bus companies put on extra buses, hoping that they'll get extra business. Well, I
Sure.
found out that in fact, the buses they will only take reservations, and once the reservations are full, once the bus is full, that's it. No more buses put on the trips. So that's
Yeah,
more
right.
to the yeah. That was an interesting one that I'd never anticipated.
Yeah, but it makes sense, right? Because the fuel costs.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah. Well, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, but it's something that I hadn't considered until I had this conversation
Sure.
with a colleague.
Sure, sure. And so how are businesses kind of responding to this? Like, how do you kind of cover those lost tourists or the lost income?
Um, Well, you try and put together, as far as the resorts and hotels go, you try and put together packages that are um, have additional services and benefits, to try and entice people.
Mm,
Um, I think probably what's happened is that a lot of the domestic market, a lot of Vietnamese that might have headed off overseas during the holiday periods,
sure.
they've probably decided to stay in Vietnam. And even though the fuel costs have gone up maybe 30% or so, they would rather pay a bit extra on fuel to drive to a resort rather than pay a lot more and fly to another country, fly to Thailand or somewhere like that, where they do love to go. So I think it's probably focused the domestic market on Vietnam rather than overseas.
Sure. And sort of, hotels sort of anticipating long-term implications? Like, I mean, is it affecting investment or project developments? Or is it too early for that?
I think well, it has actually, because what's happened is that with the fuel prices increasing, it's increased the cost of construction. So
Sure.
there's a lot of new hotel and resort development about around the country, and I know that in some cases, some of those projects that have been under construction now, they've either been put on hold or they've slowed right down because they just can't afford to. Well, I suspect what they're doing is hoping that the fuel prices will drop and construction costs will come back again somewhere in the future.
Sure.
I imagine, but that's happened quite a bit particularly in Phu Quoc, and I heard also in some new resort areas in Da Nang and further north. So they've just been put on hold or slowed down a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder too if, I mean, after COVID, it took a while for tourism numbers to get back up. I think last year was the first year that they'd beaten their pre 2019 levels. And so, I mean, this coming in on top, were those businesses kind of, were they fully recovered or were they still recovering from that sort of when this hit?
Oh, yeah,
Uh,
look, they pretty much recovered
sure.
from COVID. What happened after COVID though was the
Mm,
domestic business really went wild in Vietnam.
sure.
There was revenge travel for the domestic market. So
Hmm.
even what really pulled back the numbers for total tourism numbers was the inbound market. That took some time to recover, but the
Mm,
domestic tourism that went very well for straight after COVID.
sure, sure. Okay, cool. And then I guess just like what are your expectations moving forward, or what is the industry expecting? Um, yeah, like is this expected to be like a short-term thing, or are people sort of preparing for something that's going to take, months or years?
Ask Mr. Trump. Look,
Yeah.
I think the whole the whole world is wondering the
Sure,
same thing. It's
sure.
affecting everybody in well, all facets of life, not just tourism. But if we talk about tourism, I think everyone's just wondering what's going on. I'm sure there's many people around the world are just holding back, waiting. The long haul flights from Europe to this part of the world, the costs, the prices of flights are exorbitant. Some of my friends who are Europeans, they're telling me how much the flights are now to go back home and for a trip. Just ridiculous, absolute double the price.
Sure.
So that's it, obviously going to affect tourism to Asia. But what we're hoping is that um, regional Asian business will 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 still continue, even though it's at a slowdown right now from countries like Korea and Taiwan and Hong Kong, etc. We're
Mm,
sort of hoping that will still continue But also, we've actually seen a bit of a rise in the Australian market. The Australians, I think maybe a lot of Australians who might have gone to Europe or North America or other places, they're the Australian numbers have come up quite significantly in the last few months. I
Mm,
can't give you
that,
exact numbers. I don't know that, but I'm just talking. I have a lot of I communicate a lot with colleagues in different resorts around the country, and these are the comments I'm getting.
yeah, yeah. Okay, cool. All right, man. That's plenty for me. Did you have anything else you wanted to add? Anything you think I've missed?
No, I don't think so. I think a lot of people is just in this holding pattern, waiting to see what happens and hoping that this whole crisis gets over quickly. But construction costs, as I said, just holding back on wanting to spend too much on travel. The whole world's sort of a bit of an unsure state right now. So
Mm,
I think people are just not so willing to spend so much. And even construction costs are not just on hotels and resorts. There's been a hold on other real estate developments in the likes of Saigon and Hanoi as well. They've slowed down or just put a hold on further developments. Not all of them, but a lot have. Some of the big
yeah,
developers, they just carry on anyway. They've got deep pockets, and they're able to carry on.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Okay, mate. Well, thank you very much for your input and thank you for your time. Uh, enjoy the rest of your holiday.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. And again, sorry about my camera. I have no idea why it's not working. It just
I had you for the first sort of 2 or 3 minutes and then you dropped out, if that makes any
oh, okay,
difference. So it was
okay,
working at the start, but anyway, all good, man. All good. Thanks again.
all right, all right. Pleasure. Thanks, Mark.
Cheers,
Cheers.
John.
Bye
Bye,
bye.
mate.